I never believed the stories about the old Devadlo Carolinum Theater tucked between the narrow, crooked streets of Prague's old town, the kind of building that looks like it's permanently exhaling centuries of dust. But from the moment I stepped inside, I felt something crawling under my skin, as if the air itself was watching me. I was there because my friend Tomas had dared me, half joking, half serious, to record a short documentary about supposedly haunted Czech stages for his student film project, and since I've been staying with him for a few weeks, I agreed mostly to shut him up. He knew I hated old theaters ever since a childhood memory of being trapped backstage during a school play, but this time I wasn't a kid, and I wasn't alone. At least that's what I kept repeating to myself as we approached the theater at nearly 8 in the evening, long after any tourists were gone and only the flickering street lamps lit the cobblestone alleys. The door was unlocked just like Tomas said it would be. Old buildings around here often never bothered with real security, and with one heavy push, it scraped open like something inside was resisting us. The moment it opened fully, the smell hit me. Mold, old velvet, and something bitter like metal soaked in humidity for decades. Tomas laughed when he saw my face twist, but even he hesitated before stepping inside. This place was abandoned after a fire in 1981. He reminded me, though he said it the way someone recites a fact from Wikipedia, not like someone who believes it. The lobby was lit only by the pale glow of our flashlights, but my light kept dimming like the batteries were dying, even though I had replaced them an hour earlier. The floors creaked loud enough to echo, and every sound we made bounced back at us as though something far bigger was moving with us. We set up our tripods near the hallway leading to the audience seats, and Tomas started recording his intro, a casual explanation about the theater's history, the fire, the rumors of actors who died here, the whispers about a trapped stagehand whose body was never found. I rolled my eyes at the melodrama, but stayed quiet. When we entered the main auditorium, the temperature dropped so sharply that my breath appeared even though it was late spring. The rows of red seats stretched into darkness, and the stage curtains, faded to a dull burgundy, hung stiff as if frozen. My flashlight flickered again, and Tomas commented that maybe the place had electrical interference from somewhere, although we weren't using anything plugged in. That was the first moment I heard it. Footsteps on the stage. Slow, heavy, deliberate. I raised my light instantly, but nothing moved. The curtain didn't sway. The air didn't shift. Tomas didn't hear anything, or at least he pretended he didn't, but I could see a tension in his jaw that wasn't there before. He continued filming, saying he wanted to capture the backstage area too, so we moved toward the side wings. The corridors behind the stage were narrow and claustrophobic, lined with dusty costumes still hanging on hooks, as if actors had stepped out of them moments ago. My light landed on a cracked mirror at the dressing room entrance, and for a split second, I swear I saw someone standing behind me, tall, with an elongated silhouette, but when I spun around, no one was there. I told Tomas we should leave soon, but he brushed me off, insisting we needed more footage. He walked toward the far end of the hallway while I stayed back, documenting the dressing rooms. That was when I heard him call my name, not a panicked yell, but strained, like he was trying not to sound afraid. I rushed toward his voice, only to find him standing completely still in front of a door marked prop storage. He whispered, "Someone's inside," and then we both heard it, the unmistakable sound of something heavy dragging across the floor inside that room, followed by a soft tapping, almost like fingers drumming on wood. Neither of us wanted to open that door, but the sound stopped abruptly, replaced by total silence. And sometimes silence is worse than noise. Tomas pushed the door open slowly, and the beam of his flashlight sliced through the dust-filled air. The room was filled with mannequins, old set pieces, coiled ropes, and broken lighting rigs. My eyes scanned every corner, but nothing moved. We stepped inside, our footsteps crunching on plaster bits. Then something clicked loudly, like a rope snapping tight, and one of the mannequins toppled forward, falling face first onto the floor. Tomas jumped back, swearing, but I saw something else, a shadow behind the mannequin, one that stretched toward us but didn't match either of our shapes. I told him we needed to leave. He agreed this time, but when we turned to exit the room, the door was half closed, even though neither of us touched it. For a moment, neither of us breathed. Then the footsteps began again, this time right outside the door. Slow, heavy, echoing, approaching. Tomas killed his flashlight and dragged me behind a stack of wooden crates, whispering for me not to move. I wanted to argue, I wanted to run, but the footsteps stopped inches from the door. The handle turned, very slowly, as if whatever was outside wanted us to hear its patience. The door creaked open. I couldn't see anything through the narrow slits between the crates, but I felt a pressure in the air like the oxygen was being sucked out of the room. Tomas's hand crushed my arm with fear. Something stepped inside. I heard it move past the crates, soft now, as if it floated just above the floor, and then it stopped again. My chest tightened. I couldn't tell if seconds or minutes passed. Then, from across the room, something whispered my name. Not in Tomas's voice, in a voice that didn't sound human. I clamped my mouth shut, every muscle in my body trembling. The whisper grew louder, circling the room in a direction no footsteps followed, as if the voice was detached from any real body. Tomas squeezed my arm harder, signaling that we should crawl out the other side. Inch by inch, we moved, trying not to knock anything over. The whisper suddenly cut off, replaced by a low, breathy exhale directly behind us. I don't remember deciding to run. My body just acted. I grabbed Tomas and sprinted toward the hallway. We didn't look back. We didn't talk. We just ran. When we reached the stage again, the entire theater was darker, impossibly darker, even though we hadn't turned off the house lights. My flashlight flickered violently, then died completely. The emptiness of the theater seemed to pulse around us. A thunderous boom echoed from somewhere above, like something massive dropped from the rafters. Tomas aimed his camera upward, but there was nothing except the faint outline of someone standing on the catwalk. A figure tall enough to bend slightly under the beams, with limbs too long, too thin. Tomas whispered, "Do you see it?" I nodded. Slowly, the figure tilted its head. Then it stepped forward, one long, jerking movement, and began walking along the metal walkway, its footsteps clanging like hammers. We ran again, practically falling into the lobby. The exit door loomed ahead, salvation just a few meters away. But before we reached it, a sound exploded behind us, a shrill string of laughter, like someone trying to mimic human joy but failing miserably. Tomas screamed, really screamed, and shoved me toward the exit. "Run," he yelled. I burst through the door into the icy night air. I didn't hear Tomas behind me. I turned, expecting him to be right there. He wasn't. I called his name. No answer. I called again. The door to the theater slowly creaked shut, though no wind was blowing. I rushed back, grabbing the handle, but it wouldn't move. It felt welded shut. I pounded on it until my fists hurt, shouting for Tomas. No sound came from inside. No footsteps. No whisper. Nothing. Eventually, I called the police. They searched the entire building for hours. They found nothing. No signs of struggle. No footprints besides ours. No body. Not even Tomas's camera or bag. It was like he never entered the place at all. But I know what I saw. I know what I heard. They told me Tomas probably wandered off in a panic and got lost in the twisting streets before I noticed. Something about stress, darkness, disorientation. But I know that isn't true. Because sometimes, late at night, when the world is dead quiet and everyone else is asleep, I hear it again. Those same slow, heavy footsteps echoing in my hallway. And sometimes I hear the whisper too, dragging itself across the walls like a nail. Always the same words. Always in that same voice. I'm still here. I hadn't planned on returning to the Old Prague Theater, not after what happened to Tomas. Not after weeks of police interviews and sleepless nights where I swore I heard him calling my name from corners of my apartment where no voice could exist. But the human brain does something strange when it's afraid. Almost like fear becomes a compass pointing you back to the very place you should avoid. And after a month of trying to convince myself that everything inside that theater was just panic and darkness playing tricks on me, I found myself unable to shake the idea that maybe, just maybe, Tomas was still alive somewhere in there, trapped, hidden, hurt, or even stuck behind some locked room the police didn't check, because surely he couldn't just vanish into thin air, not completely, not with no trace, no belongings, no footprints, no sound. No scream except the one I remember echoing from somewhere behind me before the door slammed shut and locked me outside. I kept thinking about his last words, run, and how guilt had curled inside me ever since. So when I received the anonymous text message, a block number, just one line, he's still inside. I didn't delete it, didn't report it, didn't even try to convince myself it was a prank. I simply stared at the words until my hands started shaking because the message felt familiar, like the voice that whispered to me inside that storage room could somehow type 2, and even though every instinct screamed for me to forget it, I couldn't. I bought a train ticket back to Prague the same night. It was raining hard when I arrived. The kind of cold, needle-sharp rain that makes even crowded streets feel empty. The city lights blurred in the reflection of puddles, windows, passing trams. Prague had always felt welcoming to me, cozy, old world, almost magical. But now every street looked hostile. Every alley felt like something was hiding inside it, waiting, breathing. I walked toward the theater as if summoned, each step heavier than the last. And when I reached the building, the same cracked facade, the same rotten scent seeping from between the door hinges. The first thing I noticed was that the door wasn't locked this time. It was cracked open slightly, like a mouth waiting to speak. I didn't have a flashlight this time. I didn't bring a camera. Just a small pocket knife, which I didn't even know how to use, and a stupid belief that somehow going inside would make things right. I pushed the door open slowly. The lobby looked exactly the same, dark, dust-filled, silent. Except not completely silent. I heard a sound. Music. Soft, distant, fragile. It took me a moment to recognize it. An old piano melody, drifting from somewhere near the stage, though it sounded out of tune and broken, like someone pressing keys with trembling fingers. I told myself it was impossible that the entire building should have no electricity, no working instruments, no way for music to exist. But I kept walking. The auditorium was darker than before, the rows of seats swallowed entirely by shadow, but the melody grew clearer with every step. As I approached the stage, I noticed something strange, fresh footprints on the dusty floor. They weren't mine. They weren't the police's. They were too recent, too sharp, like someone had walked through just minutes before I arrived. I swallowed hard and stepped onto the stage. The music stopped instantly. The piano, an old black one pushed into the corner of the stage, sat there with its lid raised, keys exposed. A few keys were pressed down, as if invisible fingers were still resting there. I said Tomas's name aloud, my voice shaking. Nothing answered. My phone buzzed. When I pulled it out, the same block number had sent another message. Backstage. My legs moved before my brain could argue. I walked behind the curtain into the dim labyrinth of corridors that felt even narrower than before, the air thick with mildew and something else. An old metallic scent, faint but noticeable. Every dressing room I passed had its lights on, even though there were no bulbs in the sockets. The mirrors were fogged up as if someone had been breathing directly against them, though when I wiped one clean, nothing stood behind me except darkness. Then I heard it. Footsteps. Slow, heavy, deliberate, coming from down the hallway. The same sound I heard the night Tomas disappeared. I froze. The footsteps stopped too, as if they sensed me listening. Then came another sound, a slow, creaking moan of a door being opened somewhere deeper inside the building, and a cold breeze swept the hallway, blowing dust into my eyes. I called out again, louder, hoping it was Tomas, hoping he would respond, but the only reply was a soft tapping on the wall beside me, like someone gently knocking their fingernails against the plaster. Tap, 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 tap. The rhythm was almost like a message. The corridor lights flickered. The tapping stopped. Then a whisper came from behind me, so close it tickled my ear. Turn around. I didn't want to. My body felt glued to the floor, but something stronger than fear, curiosity, guilt, desperation, forced me to turn. At first I saw nothing, just the empty hallway. But then, far down where the darkness thickened, a figure stepped forward. Tall, thin, too thin. Its limbs were wrong. Bent in places limbs don't bend. Its head tilted as if studying me from a distance. And then it took a step. The sound echoed. It took another, and another, each step faster than the last. I stumbled backward, breath shaking, until I accidentally pushed open a door and fell inside a room that looked like a storage closet, but not the same one Tomas and I had hidden in. It was smaller, cleaner, almost untouched. Strange, considering the rest of the building. In the center of the room sat a single spotlight, the kind used for rehearsals. It was turned on, shining directly onto the floor where something lay. Tomas's backpack. My chest tightened. I rushed to it, unzipping it with frantic hands. Inside was his camera, still recording, still on, battery full, screen glowing faintly. I pressed play. The first few seconds were shaky footage of Tomas walking backstage the night we were here together, whispering to me to keep close. Then the video glitched. The screen went black, then flashed white, then showed an image that made my stomach drop. Tomas running, alone, screaming my name over and over, breath ragged, the camera bouncing wildly. I listened in horror as he yelled, "Where are you? Where did you go?" As if I had been the one who disappeared that night. Not him. Then the camera tilted upward, catching a glimpse of the thing we saw on the catwalk. A tall, skeletal silhouette leaning directly over him, reaching. Tomas screamed one last time. The screen filled with static. And then, impossibly, my own voice came from the camera's speakers. "I'm still here." I dropped the camera instantly. It clattered against the floor, but didn't break. The temperature in the room plummeted. My breath turned white in the air. And then I heard footsteps again, right outside the door. They stopped at the threshold. The door handle slowly began to turn. Something inside me snapped. I grabbed the backpack, the camera, everything, and bolted out through the opposite side of the room, which led into another corridor I'd never seen before, one lined with red velvet walls and old costume racks that swayed even though there was no breeze. I heard the footsteps following. Faster now. Not walking. Almost running. I dashed down the hallway, heart pounding so hard it hurt, until I reached a staircase leading down beneath the stage. Against all logic, I took it. The basement was worse than anything above. A maze of rotten wood, rusted pipes, collapsed scenery pieces, and old stage machinery that looked like it hadn't been touched since the early 1900s. The shadows here were thicker, heavier. They clung to the walls like living things. As I moved deeper, I noticed faint carvings scratched into the walls. Names, dates, symbols I didn't recognize. Some were fresh. Some looked like fingernail marks. One name appeared over and over, carved so obsessively it nearly tore the plaster apart. Carol. 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 I remembered Tomas telling me about the stagehand who supposedly died here, the one whose body was never found, the one rumored to still wander the theater, looking for the actors who left him behind during the fire. My pulse quickened. A piece of metal clanged behind me. I spun around, flashlight, app, raising in my shaky hand, but the light barely cut through the darkness. And then I saw him, or what was left of him. A figure half hidden behind a massive wooden pulley machine, body twisted at impossible angles, head hanging slightly off-center, as if his neck had been broken long ago, but never healed right. His skin looked stretched, thin, almost translucent in patches. But it was his eyes that froze me. They weren't eyes at all, just two sunken black voids, deep and endless. He didn't walk toward me. He glided, silent, effortless. I stumbled backward, tripping over old ropes and wooden beams until my back hit a brick wall. The figure stopped inches from me. No breath, no movement, just an overwhelming pressure of being watched by something wrong. Then he raised one hand, slowly, extending a long, bony finger toward my chest. He tapped once, and in a voice that scraped like rusted metal, he whispered, "You left him." My vision blurred. My ears rang. I wanted to scream, but nothing came out. The figure reached toward me again, fingers stretching unnaturally long, and then the entire basement shook violently. Dust rained down from the ceiling. Pipes groaned. Something above crashed loudly, like a part of the stage collapsing. The figure jerked its head upward, distracted for a moment. I used that moment to crawl beneath a fallen piece of scenery and squeeze through a narrow opening in the wall, a gap barely wide enough for my shoulders. I scraped my arms raw, pushing through it, but the sound of the thing following me made the pain irrelevant. The tunnel led back toward the main auditorium. I emerged behind the stage again, breathless, shaking. The auditorium lights were now fully lit. Not dim, not flickering, but blazing bright. The entire theater looked alive. Every seat was filled. Rows and rows of dark, motionless silhouettes sitting perfectly still, all facing the stage. I felt sick. The audience didn't move, didn't breathe, didn't whisper. They simply watched me. And slowly, almost in unison, they all tilted their heads to the right. Then they rose, not standing, floating, a few inches off the ground, their feet dangling limply. Their bodies swayed like puppets waiting for strings. I bolted for the exit, but the doors slammed shut before I reached them. I spun around, heart tearing itself apart inside my chest, and saw the figures floating closer, drifting toward the stage, toward me, their hollow faces expressionless. A voice boomed through the speakers overhead. Old, crackling, distorted. A voice I recognized. "Tomas, don't leave me." The lights shut off. Screams, hundreds of them, erupted from the floating silhouettes. A rising chaotic shriek that felt like it would split my skull. I slammed my body against the exit door until it flew open and I tumbled into the cold night. I didn't stop running. Not when I reached the street. Not when I reached my apartment. Not even when I collapsed on the floor sobbing. When the sun finally rose, I checked Tomas's camera again. The final 10 seconds of footage had changed. It now showed the stage, empty, dark, and then, slowly, a figure stepped into frame. Me, staring into the camera, whispering something. When I played it back, the voice was unquestionably mine, but the words weren't something I remembered saying. "One more night," the video of me whispered. "Come back one more night." And then, the last frame, Tomas's face appearing behind my shoulder in the video, smiling faintly, eyes hollow. I haven't gone back yet, but last night I got another text. Another blocked number. Just 3 words. "The audience waits." I wasn't planning to return to Prague again, not after barely escaping the second time. Not after the messages started flooding my phone every night between 2:11 and 2:17 a.m. Always the same number, always blocked, always the same 3 words. "You forgot him." But something changed about a week after I fled. I started hearing footsteps in my apartment, actual footsteps, slow ones, dragging slightly like the person walking wasn't used to having legs, and each night they got closer to my bedroom door, closer to my bed, until one night I woke to the sound of heavy breathing right next to me, cold, wet, rattling breath that didn't match any living human, and when I lunged for the lamp, the breathing stopped instantly, but I could see something, an indentation on the edge of the mattress, as if someone had been sitting there, watching me sleep. That same night, I found a new message on my phone, sent at 2:13 a.m. sharp. Last chance. The next morning, I booked a train back to Prague without thinking. It wasn't bravery. It wasn't guilt. It was necessity. I couldn't live with the footsteps haunting every corner of my home. Couldn't live knowing Tomas's voice sometimes echoed through my vents at night, calling my name with a tone so desperate it made my chest ache. I arrived in Prague under a sky the color of lead, thick clouds rolling over the old city like something alive, and the wind was ice cold even though it wasn't winter. I walked straight from a station to the Old Prague Theater, and for the first time since any of this began, the streets around it were completely empty. Not a single tourist, not a single local, not even a stray cat wandering the alleys. It felt like the whole city was holding its breath. The theater door was open again, only this time wide open, almost inviting, and the moment I stepped inside, the door slammed shut behind me with such force the floorboards shook. I spun around, heart racing, but the door didn't budge. The lobby was pitch black until the chandeliers overhead flickered on by themselves, casting a sickly yellow light across peeling wallpaper and shattered glass frames that looked newly broken since my last visit. The air smelled different too, less like mold and more like burnt wood, like the smoke of a fire that had never truly gone out. I called out Tomas's name. My voice echoed far too long, bouncing unnaturally, stretching across the theater as though the building itself repeated it, mocking me. And then I heard something. Laughter. Not a human laugh. Not joyful. It sounded like a recording of laughter played backward and slowed down, twisting into something unrecognizable. It came from the auditorium. I didn't want to enter, but my feet moved anyway, as if pulled. The auditorium lights were all on, revealing the rows of red velvet seats, dusty but intact. The stage curtain was closed, rippling slightly even though there was no breeze. And every single seat, was occupied. My throat tightened. The figures sitting in the chairs weren't people. Not living ones anyway. They looked like wax dummies melted halfway down their bodies, with pale, cracked faces stretched into half-formed expressions. Their eyes, if you could call them that, were empty hollows. And all of them were turned toward the stage. I tried to back away, but the aisle behind me closed in, literally closed in, as if the seats shifted by themselves, blocking my escape route. The curtain parted, slowly, painfully slowly. Behind it stood a single spotlight, illuminating a lone figure, Tomas, or what was left of him. He was thinner, paler, his clothes shredded, and his eyes had the same hollow darkness as the figures in the seats. But he moved. He stepped forward into the light, head tilted slightly, and raised one hand toward me. "You came back," he whispered, though his lips barely moved. His voice echoed unnaturally, as if carried by something inside the theater rather than by him. My knees nearly buckled. "Tomas, what happened to you?" I managed to say. He didn't answer. Instead, he pointed toward the backstage door. "He wants to see you." I knew who he meant. Carol, the stagehand who died in the fire. The one whose body was never found. The one who stalked me through the basement like a shadow with a mind. The one who whispered that I left Tomas behind. Against my will, I walked down the aisle, past the rows of melted puppet-like figures, each one turning its head to follow my movement. Their necks cracked as they twisted. When I reached the backstage door, it opened by itself. The hallway beyond was darker than anything I had ever seen. Like the darkness wasn't just absence of light, but an actual substance swallowing the walls. I stepped inside. The door closed behind me. Then I heard it. Footsteps. Slow. Heavy. Coming from right behind me. I spun around, but no one was there. Then the footsteps came from ahead of me. Then to my left. Then to my right. The sound multiplied, circling me, closing in, until I broke into a run. I sprinted through the corridor, passing dressing rooms that flickered between states. One moment dusty and abandoned. The next moment lit and filled with actors applying makeup, laughing, preparing for a show from decades earlier, before flickering back to empty decay. I reached the prop storage room, the same room where Tomas had vanished the first time, and the moment I stepped inside, the door slammed shut. The lights flickered on, and the mannequins inside slowly turned their heads toward me, one by one, joints snapping, eyes empty, mouths slightly open. I backed away until my shoulders hit the far wall. A cold hand touched my neck. I screamed and spun around. No one was there, but the whisper was. Downstairs. I didn't want to go downstairs again. The basement was where Carol appeared. The basement was where the shadows felt alive. But the room began to shake, mannequins falling forward, crawling toward me with creaking limbs, so I bolted through the only open door, a new door, one I hadn't seen before, leading to a spiral staircase. I descended fast, the steps groaning under my weight, the air thickening with every turn. The basement was darker than before. The carvings on the walls were fresher, deeper, almost frantic. Entire sections were scratched with dozens of names. Names of actors, stagehands, audience members, all repeating over and over, as though someone tried desperately to write them out before forgetting them forever. In the center of the basement stood the old pulley machine again, ropes dangling like veins. And standing beside it was Carol. His body was even more distorted now, limbs impossibly long, head bent sharply to one side. His skin was stretched tight across bones that looked ready to pierce through. He didn't move at first. Then, slowly, he raised his head. His voice scraped the air. "You came back to finish the show." I shook my head violently. "I came for Tomas." Carol let out a noise that could have been laughter or could have been a dying breath. He belongs to the theater now. My chest tightened with panic and rage. Take me instead, I said, and I didn't even know why I said it. Carol stepped toward me, and with each step the room shook, dust falling from the ceiling like ash. You already gave yourself away, he whispered, the moment you stepped inside the first time. Then he raised one hand and placed his finger on my forehead. My body froze completely, and the world changed. I wasn't in the basement anymore. I was standing on the stage, under the spotlight, facing a full living audience. Actors, musicians, stagehands, all watching me with eager anticipation. Tomas stood beside me, smiling like he used to, healthy alive. He leaned in and whispered, "It's almost showtime." Music swelled. Curtains rose. The theater glowed with warmth and life. For a moment, I believed everything was normal, that maybe I had imagined all the horror, that maybe we were about to perform something, that maybe the fear had twisted reality in my mind. Then the spotlight dimmed. The audience's faces melted. Tomas's smile stretched too wide, tearing at the corners. And the stage beneath me caught fire. Flames erupted around the curtains, climbing fast, swallowing the ropes, roaring through the rafters. Actors screamed. Stagehands ran. Smoke choked the air. And in the middle of it all, Carol walked calmly through the flames, untouched, approaching me with arms outstretched as if welcoming me home. "Stay," he whispered. "This is where you belong. This is where you always belonged." I tried to run. My legs didn't move. The heat blistered my skin. My vision blurred. The fire roared louder, consuming everything, and over the crackling flames I heard Tomas's voice shouting, "Don't leave me again." I collapsed. The world faded. When I opened my eyes, the fire was gone. The stage was cold. The theater was empty. I was alone, or so I thought. Footsteps echoed behind me. Slow, deliberate. I turned around. Tomas stood in the aisle. His body flickered like a dying projection. "It's too late," he whispered. "You shouldn't have come back." He reached out for me, but his hand passed through my shoulder like smoke. Then he faded completely. I ran for the exit. This time, the door opened. I stumbled out into the night air, gasping, crying, shaking. The theater behind me stood silent, its windows dark, its doors closed. No sign of life. No sign of fire. No sign of Tomas. I ran all the way back to my hotel, locked the door, and collapsed on the floor. I thought I had escaped. But around 2:13 a.m., my phone buzzed. A new message. A video file. From a blocked number. Hands trembling, I pressed play. The video showed the stage. The spotlight. A figure standing under it. Me. But not me. The version on the screen was smiling, eyes black and hollow, body stiff like a puppet. The camera zoomed in, and the video me whispered, "Your turn." Then, from behind me in my hotel room, footsteps. Heavy, slow, getting closer. And a voice, broken, wrong, echoing from the walls, whispered, "Curtain call."